morning, to our members of the State Board of Education of Ohio. I was hired by the Gulen-affiliated Horizon Science Academy in Dayton. Back in 2009 through 2011, I taught there, and I was hired in a very brief interview. Like most teachers at the time, coming out of college, your 6 months were up, you had to start paying your loans. I took the job at $25,000 a year, 6 classes, 3 preps. Early on, there were a lot of red flags. It was a science academy with no science labs for the whole 3 years I was there. Turkish teachers didn't do much teaching from what the students told me and from what I observed, and the American teachers worked extremely hard. A lot of pressure was put on us. Racism and sexism were common. There was no professionalism towards women. It was almost gross that sometimes we'd be in the middle of conversations and they would be told to be quiet or flat out ignored. Sometimes they'd even be cut off midpoint if what they were saying the administrators didn't want to hear. Over time, some teachers had their insurance canceled. In the delivery room, the hospital asked how they were going to pay for it because they didn't have insurance. Oh, also, we sometimes didn't get paychecks, and they blamed you, the state of Ohio, for not paying them so they couldn't pay us. I don't really believe that excuse. Eventually, we did get our paychecks. Asking questions could get you fired. You never really spoke or complained, even if it was about the children, and especially if you were a woman. The majority of people that were fired or let go after the year were women during my 3 years there. Racism was an issue. Black kids would be disciplined much more severely than Turkish students. If there was a fight in school, as was said before, the Turkish students would be back the next day. Many of the black students would get severe consequences. School administrators clearly lied about attendance. I can honestly tell you never once did I have a full classroom with my roster with every single student, yet they reported to you the 97% attendance rate. I guess that's an easy one to fudge. There's no really oversight on that at all. Even though standardized tests are supposed to be taken and locked in a secure place, that did not always occur, if ever. All the tests would go into one room with one Turkish administrator behind a locked door, and nobody would ever see the tests again. I was well liked. I left on my own accord. I have moved on professionally, but I couldn't move on morally. That's why I'm here today. The Turkish teachers I got along with, the Turkish administrators, and the American teachers. But this wasn't the case for all teachers. The American teachers worked very hard, coming in on the weekends many times. We liked what we did, we cared about the students, and most of the Turkish teachers could barely speak English, but some of the worst that have already been mentioned was Mr. Ozer. I would have students come up to me and say, we are just getting worksheets or watching Hall of the Wild. They made him the director of the downtown Dayton school. His wife came in and they said she was volunteering, but she was working in the guidance office as a guidance counselor, and both her and the other Turkish guidance counselor would bring in their children every day. The American teachers were pretty frustrated by that, having to pay for childcare on $28,000 a year while they got to bring their children in to school. We were especially frustrated during testing week. They promised kids all sorts of things, laptops, field trips. There were posters on the walls telling them all sorts of prizes they would get if they succeeded. Now, as an educator, I take my profession seriously, and I know that research shows that those incentives don't work. We showed them that research. They didn't care. It was all about the image. What mattered was appearances. Even worse, they didn't come through with half of the promises they made. Right now, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.